Hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for the webinar today on understanding CDP's 2018 scoring for climate change and water for suppliers. My name is Ria Lowe and I'm the supply chain manager here at CDP. I'm joined by Alistair Ney, who is our technical officer in the CDP as well, and also Michelle Karchman, who is the sustainability and programs and services with ADEC Innovations. So I'll be giving you a short introduction to CDP supply chain, perhaps with some heads up on what's happening next week. And then I'll be passing to Alistair to give you an overview of CDP scoring from CDP's technical team perspective. And then we'll be passing over to Michelle, who'll be giving us insights and support from ADEC Innovations, with some time for questions at the end. If you do have any questions, please do put them into the Q&A box on the right-hand side of the screen, and we will get to those at the end of the webinar. So, I work in CDP's supply chain team. It's lovely to have all of you suppliers on the webinar today. You've obviously all responded to your customers' requests for climate and water information in 2018, and you will have received your scores last week. We've got your SCR scores being released next week in line with the CDP supply chain report, which will be called, it's going to be called Cascading Commitments, and it will be giving you lots of insights, general trends that we've seen in the supply chain program responses this year. It's all to do with these companies on the screen right here, 115 CDP supply chain members representing over $3.3 trillion in spending power. Because of their requests, over 5,600 of you responded in 2018. So I hope that's what gives you kind of some idea of the scale of the program and what you've kind of been part of, and what your scores can mean in terms of benchmarking. But without further ado, I will pass you over to my colleague Alistair in our scoring team, which is why you are all on this call today. Ali, can you hear me?
Hi everyone.
Great, thanks Ali. I'm just passing you presenter rights.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks for joining everyone. As Ria said, my name's Alistair Ney and I work in the scoring team here at CDP. And we're going to take a little tour through understanding the climate change and water score. So I will start with an overview of our scoring process. We've got a few principles that we base our scoring process around. The first thing is that we are very much independent and impartial. The scoring methodology has been developed in partnership with companies and other stakeholders, and people were able to submit their feedback to that. And we are independent in that the scoring itself is undertaken by partner organisations who are trained by CDP, and we rigorously quality assure all of their work to ensure that the scoring is correct. We are also comparable in that we have a methodology which is the same for each sector in all countries, which means that no matter where you are, as long as you're in the same industry, then the same key actions need to be demonstrated and to get the same score. We're also transparent. As most of you know, the full guidance, the methodology is all on the website, and webinars like this and other technical explanations, and so you can know exactly how to achieve a certain score. And we're very wide-reaching. This year we've had over 5,000 individual scores awarded for the climate change supply chain program, and over 1,500 for the water supply chain program, which is excellent and an increase on last year. And we're very influential. Both suppliers and customers use our scores to drive action. So a quick look at how credible are we. This is a study that was done where, in effect, the raters rated the raters, looking at the question was, how credible do you find the following ratings and rankings to be? And we came out on top with all of our, I guess, competitors, suggesting that we are the most credible of all of these sustainability rankings and ratings. So in order to facilitate the changes which have been introduced this year by both sector-specific scoring and alignment with the TCFD, which, if you don't know, is the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, CDP has introduced a number of new scoring approaches in 2018 to ensure that our scores remain both meaningful and comparable this year. So we've had a few guiding principles in our development of this. The first thing is that when we develop the methodologies for this year, we need to amend the methodology to reflect changes to the questionnaire which have occurred, but we also wanted to improve those methodologies. We wanted to make them more effective at measuring progress towards environmental stewardship. The different theme methodologies, so both water and climate, were developed independently. So the aim was to align them where possible, recognising that they both require different management options to approach different issues, and that both of those questionnaires have different levels of maturity. One of the weaknesses of the existing methodologies is there wasn't much scope for a scorer to identify companies that were responding inconsistently across the response. For example, companies who weren't penalised if they reported contradictory data or something to that effect, which meant there was kind of a loss of confidence in companies reporting from the data users. And the new methodologies have more incentives provided to provide coherent and internally consistent responses, which both improves the quality of the responses and what can be gained from them. Environmental stewardship will require more focused action from companies, and the new questions and scoring mean that reporting is becoming less backward-looking and focused on a single year's data. Over time, we're looking forward to evolve the scoring methodologies to not be so backward-looking, and where we are at this stage helps us prepare for that future. And finally, much of the existing methodologies, despite all the change, is still effective and familiar. So we sought to preserve a lot of those parts which already worked well to try and reduce the extra work for responders in the reporting burden of working with a new methodology. But the key thing is the best practice in environmental management always changes, and our scoring has evolved to match it. So these new questions did require this new scoring, so the change is very necessary. So as I said, in 2018, we took a sector-based approach. We developed questions and scoring criteria specific to high-impact sectors for both climate change and water. Each program under the sector approach has a general questionnaire, which applies to anyone who doesn't fall into the sector-specific questionnaires. And each of those sector-specific questionnaires, along with the general, has an individual scoring methodology. In the case of those sector-specific methodologies, there's also sector-specific scores, which allows responders to better do peer-to-peer benchmarking and comparison. Obviously, many companies operate in many sectors, but we are only scoring on the primary sector of each company. So this table here shows the sector-focused approach. So alongside both the general climate change and water methodologies, we've got 18 sector-specific methodologies across both climate change and water for the high-impact sectors that you can see here. It's allowed us to have a more meaningful assessment of responses, incorporating the particular characteristics and nuances, generally resulting in a score that better reflects progress to environmental stewardship. Again, like I said, we can compare and benchmark within a sector better and compare which sectors are high or low exposure to environmental risks and opportunities. The other thing I mentioned earlier is the alignment with the TCFD, with their Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. We've aligned with this, and it means we have a greater emphasis on elements such as board oversight, climate risk assessment, management, and the use of forward-looking scenario analysis. We do align with the TCFD recommendations. Some questions have been modified, some of the criteria has been modified, and we introduce some new questions. A lot of these questions are scored up to both management and leadership levels in 2018, emphasizing the importance of the alignment of these questions. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the basics of our scoring approach. So we have levels, which some of you may be aware of, thresholds, categories, weightings, and final thresholds. So there's a lot of challenges. in assessing these kind of issues. So we aim to look holistically at a company's environmental management through our scoring approach. Our reporting platform, in effect, guides a company on a journey towards environmental stewardship, as you can see with the arrow going up here. And the scoring methodology is designed to highlight progress in this. So as well as environmental measurement and accounting, the scoring looks at the ways companies assess a broad range of climate risks and impacts, and then go on to put policy, strategy, and governance in place to manage them. Because of the need to represent a broad range of different maturities and to allow for the methodology to respond as the area of environmental stewardship best practice develops, we score the questionnaire across these 4 consecutive levels. And each of these levels has a different emphasis. Disclosure level is the simplest, and it's about demonstrating completeness in completing the questionnaire, and this drives improvements in the reliability and the quality of the data for question users, for the data users who use the questionnaire. The next level up is awareness, which is where the scoring identifies and rewards those who have looked at the implications of environment for and on their business. We're distinguishing from people who have begun to look into environmental issues from those who, while are disclosing transparently, lack the knowledge. Even without any advanced management programs in place, knowledge of the issues will allow you to be rewarded with a good awareness score. For management level, management criteria relate to actions which a company can implement, such as policies and procedure, strategy, and tracking and mitigating and stopping environmental risks and impacts. As the scoring must be equally applicable to all countries, these are not technical prescriptions. Instead, we're looking for coherent strategies and process to be implemented. One of the key things once you get up to management level is company-specific understanding of environmental issues, be they climate or water issues. We find evidence for this with explanations that show that issues have been considered with respect to the responding company specifically, rather than just at the general level. A good management score indicates that the company is taking very coordinated action at the corporate level to manage and measure water use and risks, as well as climate risks, which could directly impact upon its business. And the final category here is leadership, which is the category that looks at the best practice in environmental stewardship. This is based on companies disclosing particular actions which mark them out as leaders and have high scores in other levels. Companies achieving leadership report a very high level of detailed engagement with the environmental issues and environmental stewardship, and suggest that their strategy is integrated throughout the business, is successfully managing its risks, has advanced accounting in place, and looks to environmental management as a source of opportunity and innovation, just as much as it looks to them as risks. So these 4 levels represent the steps, as I said, on a company's journey to becoming a leading environmental steward. And the CDP score aims to give a clear picture of where on that journey they are and what action to focus on next. So while each level is the foundation for the next from a scoring perspective, each company will have an individual approach to managing climate and water issues depending on their situation. And the journey through to good stewardship is an iterative process. You have to cycle through all these levels as progress continues. And ideally each year a company would strive to improve within all levels, rather than just completing one level before proceeding to the next. One of the basics, after we talked about the levels, is the threshold approach to scoring. The scores initially are calculated as a percentage for each of the 4 levels you just saw, and the number of points achieved is divided by the number of points which could have been achieved and multiplied by 100. To be able to move through the levels, you have to have a minimum score or threshold to be achieved on one level before a company can be scored on the next. This approach is important because it incentivizes complete reporting, action-based assessment of risk and impact, and consistently showing progress across different areas. Isolated areas of excellence, while having poor performance in other areas, is disincentivized with this approach. And the final score that you get is based on the score in the highest of the 4 levels that you achieve. The other aspect of the way our scoring works is the categories. You can see on the screen for 2018 the scoring categories for both climate change in red and water in blue. With 20 categories for climate change and 13 for water. As those of you who are aware of last year's scoring approach, this is considerably higher than the 4 to 6 categories that provided last year. There are some common categories across both themes, like governance. And the scoring categories which we have here are subgroups of the 2018 questionnaire modules, and they're unique to each theme, and they're quite similar to categories in the previous feedback charts. Now, this is obviously quite a substantial increase from the number of categories, and the reason we've done this is to be able to focus on key data points and to provide a more detailed breakdown of companies' score rather than the previous amount of categories, allowing us to better indicate areas of strengths and areas of weaknesses. And this allows us to weight the scores to reflect specific actions in each category, which we may consider important or relatively unimportant. These weightings, as I said, reflect the importance of each category in the overall score. This year, weightings are applied to just the management and leadership level. We use this approach to accommodate for the fact that each sector has its very own specific issues related to the way that environmental issues affect that sector. As such, we have different weightings for each sector. For example, in the climate change questionnaire, for all sectors in the energy cluster, the targets category is the highest weighted leadership category with 12% of points. While for water security, value chain engagement might be more relevant for food companies than it is for electric utilities companies. All of our sectors and categories and public weightings are available publicly, which provide the detailed breakdown per sector. So there's two important points here about how our weightings approach works. Firstly, for new questions, we've applied a low weighting, which gives time for companies to embed into their process the questions that we're asking. Secondly, for companies responding to sector-specific questionnaires, the questions, like I said, are weighted in reflecting the relative importance of that sector, which better enables that comparison of environmental performance across sectors, and ultimately allows us to identify best-in-class performance within each sector. So I talked about thresholds earlier. In 2018, the scoring thresholds were changed from the 80% management and leadership thresholds that were used in 2017, while the disclosure and awareness thresholds remain at 80%, those management and leadership thresholds have changed. For climate change, the management threshold has been set at 75% and leadership at 65%. And for water, it's been set at management at 75 and leadership at 55. The reason we've done this is, again, to make sure that we isolate areas of excellence. And the reason there's difference between the two themes relates to the relative maturity of these themes. But yeah, the question is, like I started explaining on the next slide, why did we change the thresholds? The climate change threshold is higher than the water threshold because corporate engagement on climate change is a greater number, and at a more mature stage. We established the A-list for climate in 2011, whereas it was only introduced for water in 2015. And we have a significantly smaller pool of companies asked to respond on water. Another thing to talk about, which is very relevant here with respect to our scoring approach, is the minimum version of the questionnaire. We provide a shorter version of the questionnaire for small and medium-sized enterprises, which include today with under 250 employees and an annual revenue of less than either 250 million euros or US dollars. So you're in this situation, if you select to undertake the minimum version, you're scored using a different methodology, and as a result of it, you're not eligible for the A-list, which is something I'll come on to in a second. The score for the minimum version is certainly not a score which is comparable to the full version of the methodology, though the scoring approach is the same. However, we have less categories due to some of the questions not appearing in the minimum version. And a final important thing to note about the minimum version is that because it does not include emissions verification, an A- is the highest achievable score for answering the minimum version questionnaire. So I touched on it just a second ago, but we reward leadership at CDP scoring with the A-list. So to be able to get into the A-list, a company's response needs to meet the leadership threshold for its theme and be publicly available, pass CDP's reputational checks, which are checks that we carry out here at CDP, and meet the following requirements for each theme. For climate change, you need to be disclosing both the Scope 1 and 2 emissions figures and achieve full points for the verification of them. And you cannot have any significant exclusions. For water, you need your top score and you need to both pass the reputational checks. Note, of course, that as I just stated, these only apply to those responding to the full version of the questionnaire, as you're not eligible for an A if you respond to the minimum version. So, as I said at the start, both transparency and independence is one of our key ways we score, and as such, all of the information that I've had to go through quite quickly here is available in our resources. Online you can find the scoring methodology, scoring introduction, and category and weighting documents that make it clear for whichever sector you're in, whatever size of company you are, how you will be scored and how that scoring is applied. So you can find that at the link below, which I'm sure can be circulated in the chat. So as a very brief introduction to CDP's scoring approach, please do ask if you have any questions, otherwise I will hand back to Ria.
Thank you very much, Ali, for such a great introduction on scoring. So if we don't mind, we'll keep our questions to the end. You're all on mute, just obviously so that we can keep the audio nice and clear for the recording and we can all hear each other. But if you do have any questions, people can put it into the chat or the Q&A on the right-hand side, and we'll come to that at the end. So I'm now going to pass to Michelle with ADEC Innovations.
Thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me. And so I'm briefly going to go through some more information about scoring and resources available. And again, if you have questions, there's questions that are already coming in, and we will make sure we leave a few minutes at the end to answer those questions. And so, let's see.
Ali, would you mind passing Michelle the presenter
That's right.
please?
I can indeed.
Thank you very much.
That was
great.
weird. Thank you. Okay. Okay.
We can still see the CDP slides.
Yes. So maybe I'm trying to pull up my slides, which I was. Okay, hold on.
There we go. We can see them now, Michelle.
Okay,
we did briefly. Now we've got CDP back again. Now we've got ADEC.
So there definitely seems to be an issue. Hold on one second. And
bear with us, everyone, whilst we just resolve this.
Let me try and upload our slides again. That was just odd. Thanks so much for your patience on this. We did test it, and it did work before. There we go. Okay, so a little bit about ADEC Innovations. Some of you who have been responding to CDP for a number of years may have recognized our name as First Carbon Solutions, and we changed that to ADEC Innovations a few years ago. We have been working with the supply chain program since 2011. And now are also the scoring partner for much of the investor program as well. So over that time period, we've scored 20,000 disclosures. We have also conducted, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a few minutes, about 1,600 performance review calls with companies such as yourself. And just as a quick disclosure that we do provide services to help people with their CDP responses and other things. And so if we do provide any of those services, we do not provide official scoring services. And so taking a step back, supply chain members and your customers, where are they focusing their engagement? It's continuing to increase the number of suppliers responding to the CDP request. In 2018, a total of 5,645 companies responded to the climate change disclosure. That is an 18% increase over 2017, or 850 companies. A significant number of companies in 2018 were new supply chain disclosures, which you can see on the chart below. The average performance span since 2011 has truly remained steady, with the exception of a couple of bumps in 2013 and 14, has remained steady at D. And a lot of that is attributed to the fact that there's first-time responders into the program, and so typically a first-year company, their performance band is typically lower. But over time, your supply chain members, your customers are encouraging you to improve your scores over time and to continue to respond to CDP so they can see the trends changing over time. And again, they really want to collaborate with suppliers to improve performance for both climate change, water, and certainly forests at that period. And then from a water perspective, the number of disclosures was for this year 1,715 total responses. That is an 11.5% increase over 2017, or 177 additional responses. So when you look at performance band trends over time, and you'll see climate change on the left and water on the right, you'll notice that it is certainly becoming increasingly more difficult to achieve a leadership A- or above, which is what Ali had stated earlier. And so for 2018, about 13% of companies, of supply chain companies, received a B- or above, again, that management level or above. That's remained steady from 2017. However, on the leadership A- and above, in 2018, 4.5% approximately got a leadership A- or above in 2018. Again, as that's compared to nearly 6% in 2017. So that's on the climate change side. And on the water side, again, about 5.5% achieved leadership A- in 2017. 2.5% received a leadership A- or above in 2018. So again, as CDP continues to review and refine the methodology, again, like this year, incorporating TCFD, to encourage companies to continue to improve, again, it's that ambition in order to maintain these higher performance levels. And so again, in order to continue getting those A's, for instance, you need to continue to improve performance, and the methodology encourages that. So here's some handy hints at a very high level, and again, we'll go into more detail where you can get additional hints. Before you, to maximize your score, definitely review the CDP guidelines and the requirements. Make sure you budget time and resources to successfully complete the CDP process. And then on the climate change side, make sure you're establishing targets for emissions reductions, you're reporting year-over-year emissions reductions, you're instituting board-level sponsorship for climate management, and you're verifying your Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. On the water side, again, ensuring that you collect water quality and quantity data, you're disclosing information on water usage, impacts, and methods, undertaking water risk assessments, applying water risk filters, and aligning your business goals and strategies with your water goals. And again, this is at a very high level we just see this generally. Again, we can provide more specific guidance if you go to work with ADEC on performance review calls. And again, I'll talk about that in a moment. But available services from ADEC, we do provide performance review calls for the supply chain program and the investor program. We do offer analyses and scoring assessments. We can help your company with data collection and management, engaging your supply chains if you want, and certainly completing your disclosure, and again, conflict of interest. Anyone who we provide services beyond performance review calls, we do not provide official scoring services for. And so in a few weeks, February 18th very specifically, the performance review system will be up. And when you go into the system, you will be asked to register. You will have a specific link. And so the email that you received from CDP last week, make sure you save that email. If you're working in Gmail or in Outlook, put a reminder for the week of February 18th to go back in and click that link and register in for the system. And you'll see for water and for climate change, depending upon what you have responded to, and forests, if you responded to forests, you will see a menu similar to this, and you can choose an option very similar to a shopping cart. And what you're going to do is again, you have options of basic. In some cases, I'll talk about a basic plus option. You'll have premium and premium plus options. And so for basic, every company is eligible for a basic service. And so that is free. And it is a performance review report, and it is available to all companies. It is a 3-page report. It's available in English or Chinese. And for your company, it provides overall average comparisons, industry group comparisons, category level comparisons, and some key indicators. And you can see in the graphics that I've provided on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see climate change on one side, you'll see water on the other. But you'll see that it does go into a category level assessment. And in that category level assessment, you'll see, again, different this year, you'll see little dots, and it'll give you an idea to some degree of where you are within thresholds within that category compared against your industry, your region, as well as overall. So a very helpful report, and I encourage everybody on this call to go in and take a look at their basic report. But companies can upgrade to a premium performance review if they want. But before I go there, I do want to talk about Basic Plus. Basic Plus offers an additional telephone review, and it is only available to suppliers who score a C or below. So if you're in that disclosure or awareness level, you're eligible for a 20-minute conversation with a member of the ADEC Innovations staff. It's available in English only. You can schedule them. When the system comes up, but times won't be available until after March 1st, 2019. And again, it's that same 3-page report, and we will review that report with you and give you an opportunity in that 20 minutes to be able to ask some questions and just get a little bit more insight. But again, suppliers can upgrade, and any company can upgrade to a premium performance review, and that's available to schedule as soon as possible. So you can schedule those the week of February 18th. And so this premium report gives you additional insights, and it is recommended for companies who are looking to improve your 2018 score. It includes an upgraded report, and you can see some of the graphics here below that show what's in that upgraded report. On the left-hand side, you can benchmark your company against other companies in your sector. And so you can see there's a light blue dot on the left-hand side. That would be where your score is. In this case, it was a management B. And you can see relative to other companies. Once you hover over those dots, if it's a public score, you can actually see who those companies' names are. So you can benchmark your organization. And then on the right side, you'll see that same category breakdown. So you can see little dots that show you where you perform versus others. But there's an entire new column called improvement potential. And based on the number of arrows in that section, it will focus you on where you specifically need to focus. And so it's again, this premium report is a higher level report, and then you also with this report get a 45-minute call in Chinese or English, and again those time slots are open a little bit earlier, and we do provide on those calls recommendations for various categories. The cost of a premium upgrade is $750. And then we have our final service is a Premium Plus Performance Review, and it really is maximizing the overall review, and it's recommended if you want further insights and you want specific written follow-up recommendations. The report that you receive and have access to is the same as the one I just showed you, but in addition, it is a 75-minute telephone conversation in English or Chinese, whereas ADEC provides additional recommendations, and we also provide a follow-up report detailing those recommendations. And so summarizing performance review options, again, when you log into the system the week of February 18th, you'll see all of this, but this is just a quick little chart to summarize those options for you. And again, based on where your company is looking to do and how many insights you want, will determine which option is best. And so again, before I hand it back over for the question and answer period, and I know there's a lot of questions coming in, so I want to get to that quickly. Overall for you, CDP scores are used to evaluate companies, whether you're a supplier and you are being evaluated by a purchasing department, or you're in the investor program by asset owners, asset managers, banks, and insurers. Scores are used to evaluate you. It is absolutely increasingly challenging to achieve leadership A and A- scores. For companies with scores of C and below, really the focus is improving the amount of information provided in your response. For companies who score B- or above, generally you should look to strategy, risk, and opportunity evaluation and water risks and impacts assessments. Generally, but again, use those performance review reports to go more specific. And then certainly help is at hand. ADEC is offering performance review, calls, reports, webinars, those additional services, and very specifically, we have a webinar that we will be going into more detail on March 28th. And we will be sending information out to those on the call if you're interested in participating. We'll discuss news and updates. We'll review best practices for improving your CDP's disclosure completion. And very specifically, based on feedback we had last year, we're going to dive into 2 to 3 specific, more challenging questions from this season and walk through how to read the question, use the methodology, and develop a full response. So it's really going to be more of a virtual hands-on session. And with that, I'm going to hand it back so we can have about 9 minutes for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle, for giving us an overview of ADEC Innovations services. So we are now going to move on to the questions, and as Michelle said, we have quite a few. So we may not have time to get through them all, so do bear with us. Okay, let's go to the first question. The first question that we had in came to us sort of privately, so I'm not going to name that person, but well, I will give the so Mariana, I'm just going to come back to you. I will come back to you on a particular query that you have, but one of your questions was about whether the supply chain score could be made public. So the supply chain score is by default private, and the reasoning for that is kind of purely that supply chain members, your customers, are kind of asking you, and there's obviously a lot of kind of confidentiality around your relationships with them. And we also kind of, as we started the program up, suppliers, I guess, weren't as confident in reporting as who they could potentially be smaller companies. They weren't as confident as those larger companies. So we kind of have always had them as private scores. So I can see that you are asking if you can make it public, and I will certainly look into that for you, because we are all about transparency, and it would be great if you are also wanting to do that. Obviously, that score is yours, so you can publicize it as you wish. In the meantime, so do feel free to tell anyone and everyone what score you've got. You should be very proud of it. Okay, another question that I have coming in. So here we go. For companies replying to both investor climate change and supply chain climate change, if they use the same response, will their scores be the same? And the answer to that is yes. There was a change in CDP systems this year. In previous years, there used to almost be kind of 2 questionnaires, or at least appear to be 2 separate questionnaires. But CDP has essentially aligned them into one. So you are invited to respond to climate, water, and forest. We're not talking about that today, but that is an option, by either your customers and or investors. And so when you complete that information, you just tell us who you give us permission to share that information with, and whether you'd also like that response to be public or private. The questionnaire is therefore the same. The only difference between what goes to your customers and what goes to investors is that there are an additional 4 questions on the end for customers, and this is where you can put in extra data around your supplier-customer relationship, things like allocation of emissions to the business that you do with that customer, things like collaborative opportunities, things like facility level water data that relates to the business that you do with that customer. Because of the nature of those questions, we don't score those questions. They're still useful for our supply chain members, and lots of our supply chain members use that data, but we don't score them. So the core climate change and water questions are what you would be scored for both investor and supply chain, and therefore it is exactly the same score that you receive. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, we have a question here, and I'm going to pass this one to Ali. The question is, overall, what was the impact of the sector-specific questions in 2018?
It's a very wide question, but I would say, as I emphasised, is from our side that it allowed this for the first time comparison between sectors. Obviously, previously before CDP was operating on the approach of the same questionnaire for all responders, which is excellent. But obviously, different sectors have quite significantly different impacts and challenges. I think it's for the first time where we've seen in responses an identification of allowing to understand how specific challenges in each sector are being addressed. I hope that's the kind of response that someone was looking for that question.
Thanks, Ali. If there's something else you were looking kind of a bit more round on that, please do put that into the Q&A or chat, and we'll try and get back to you again. So, okay, here's another one for you, Ali, I think. Let me just read it. Is the scoring done manually by reviewing each company response, or is it an automated one?
That's a very good question. It's a bit of both. For the first two levels that I talked about, disclosure and awareness, they are scored automatically, mostly because those levels are related to completion, selecting certain options, those kind of aspects. But for both the management and leadership levels, the levels which are about actions, those responses are and those levels are reviewed manually by our scoring partners who are trained by us, quality assured by us, because those parts of responses are fields which require a human to read and to understand the impact of a process.
Great, thanks, Ali. Okay, we have some more questions, and I realise we only have 3 minutes left of the webinar, so do bear with us. So we've got some questions that are kind of around the same sort of theme. So I'll pick one of them because they're all kind of essentially the same. It says, why does CDP not provide points scored per question? And the other one was about how can I get detailed results per question. So you can see there's a lot of questions around that. And the reason for that is that CDP scoring is meant to be a reflection of a company's journey through their environmental stewardship. So when we provide a score, your overall score to you, it's about encouraging you to improve your overall environmental performance, not on incremental score increases. That is basically the rationale behind why we don't share that sort of level of detail. What we do provide. Oh, sorry, go on, Annie. Please.
I was going to say that I think we definitely recognise that the demand for that increased feedback, which is why we had more categories in 2018 to try and aid the identification in your questionnaire or in your responding process of where your advantages and weaknesses might be.
Great, thank you very much, Ali. And in fact, what I would also say is that oh, sorry, I'm just flicking between my different screens to see where the questions are. Obviously, there is there's support that ADEC can provide as well to help you kind of identify how you can improve your response next year. And Michelle, I'll pass you to that. But also as well, there's also CDP's reporter services as well, which I'd be glad to talk to you a little bit about if you do want to get in contact after this call. Michelle, do you want to talk a little bit about how, obviously building on what you've already spoke about, how you can help companies?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I really want to make a clear point that reporter services and ADEC Innovation services are complementary, and we work with a few companies who are reporter services members, and so we can certainly talk about that. But what ADEC can specifically provide, again, are those performance review calls. So at a minimum, it doesn't cost anything except logging in. So at a minimum, go in and look at the reports that are on the ADEC systems because that will provide additional insights. And then if you choose to upgrade to a premium call, it gets you, in a premium report, it gets you more insights. So that's the first step. Then after that, high level, what ADEC can provide is looking at your 2018 response with you and providing very specific guidances of where you could have achieved a better performance on a specific question, and moving forward, we can help with responses, we can help with greenhouse gas inventories, water risk assessments, that technical work, and then we also offer a scoring assessment service that before you submit your 2019 response, you can submit it to us, and we would pre-score it. Again, if we do provide any of these services, we do not provide official scoring services that Ali had mentioned earlier. So, and if it makes sense, we can work with the CDP Reporter Services team to include that as part of an option for your company if it makes sense. So that's just very short in a nutshell what we offer.
Great, thanks very much. Well, we are now slightly over time. I think there were a couple of questions we didn't quite get to. If we didn't get to you, we will get getting back to you on an individual basis. Feel free to email me with any questions that you have. It's ria.low@cdp.net. You've got my name on the front slides, and the @cdp.net is pretty standard for CDP. So yeah, we'll bring this webinar to a close. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to do a final plug as well again for the CDP Supply Chain Report, which is being launched next Wednesday, the 6th of February. There's lots of interesting insights from what suppliers have been doing, not only in the last year, in the last 10 years, because it is CDP's supply chain's 10-year anniversary this year. So it would be great for you to download that, have a read, and also keep an eye out for your SER scores, which will be shared with you by email next Wednesday as well. Your SER is a supplier engagement rating, which tells you how you are doing, how well you're doing in engaging your own suppliers on climate change. That score is private. But it's a good tool for you to use to understand how you're cascading action within your own supply chain. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you on another CDP or ADEC webinar soon. Great. Thanks very much.